Hello and welcome to ET Energy World, ladies and gentlemen. I am Sudhir, editor ET Energy World, and this is a webinar on moving towards clean energy, making renewables an accessible option. The webinar will be presented by Amit Kumar, who is a partner Clean Energy at PwC India. And there will be a presentation on the topic followed by a Q&A session. You can submit your queries at any time during the webinar by tapping into the questions panel. We will take them up in the end. Over to you, Amit. Please start.
Thank you, Mr. Sudhir. Welcome all. And now, as Sudhir mentioned, that I have around 25 to 30 minutes presentation on the topic, and followed by Q&A. And the topic today is moving towards clean energy. Now, India has witnessed around 20% year-on-year growth in renewable energy capacity addition in the last 6 years. And as we all know, that by 2022, a target of 175 gigawatt has been set, which everybody says is quite ambitious. So before we analyze that, let us see how it is all broken up till now. So total capacity as on date is around 69.7 gigawatt, out of which the majority has come from the wind, close to 49%, around 34 gigawatt. And solar has picked up quite nicely in the last 2-3 years. So the capacity overall is close to 22 gigawatt, and which is around 30% of the total capacity. And the remaining comes from biomass, waste to energy, and small hydro. Now, out of the total 330 plus gigawatt, the capacity of 69 gigawatt is in the last 2-3 years, majority of it has come. Just for example, in 2014-15 we were at 39. So in the last 3 years we have added close to 30 gigawatt. And last 2 years have been quite landmark year in the sense that capacity addition in terms of renewable versus the conventional has been from renewable side. So in 16-17, whereas we added 11.3 gigawatt from renewable as compared to 10.3 from conventional, last year this ratio was more skewed in favor of renewable, 11.8 versus 5.5 from conventional. As we all know, the breakup of 175, which is the target till 2022, solar will give around 100, 60 will come from wind, 10 from biomass, and 5 from small hydro. Now, through this slide, I am going to capture what are the key opportunities for renewable power in the country. So we all know that how this 175 on a yearly pattern will come from. These are, as you can see on the right hand side, on the upper side, 2018 80 gigawatt is what the capacity will be, and then it will progressively go up to 175 in 2022. So every year there is a target which has come from the government, which will be added, likely to be added. And the main key, the key opportunities basically are that 10 gigawatt floating solar. These are new areas. So the government is now thinking seriously about 10 gigawatt of floating solar, and SECI, Solar Energy Corporation of India, has done some work in this regard. More than 8 gigawatt capacity to come from interstate transmission, ISTS, solar and wind, and more than 10 gigawatt capacity for captive consumption by different corporates. More than 39 gigawatt of rooftop, because out of the 40 gigawatt which was likely to come from rooftop, one has already been established, commissioned. So 39 we are expecting to come from the rooftop. So India has harnessed just 5% of the gross RE potential in the year 2017, and which is expected that will increase up to 16% by 2022. Main drivers would obviously be the GDP growth, and obviously along with the GDP growth, the power demand, electricity demand. Various government schemes like Power for All, Make in India, we're expecting that they will fuel the demand growth. Plus at the same time, electric vehicle demand, which we are expecting to add close to 30 gigawatt by 2030. And that is also the estimate of the Planning Commission NITI Aayog now. Industrial corridors and various infrastructure projects like metro rails will also add to the demand. In the next slide, I have given a year-wise growth of solar, wind. As you can see, it will go up to, it has gone up to 21.7 gigawatt in terms of solar, rising from zero point 0.5, just zero point 0.5 gigawatt in the year 2011. And similarly, the wind, which is a much more matured technology, it has grown from 16 gigawatt to 34. But one thing which one can note is that solar capacity, the percentage growth of solar is much more as compared to the percentage addition of wind in the last 2 3 years. And we'll discuss some of the issues and challenges later. And on the bottom half, you will find that how the grid mounted solar and the rooftop solar, these are stacked up from 2017 to 2022. For example, 2018, the expectation is that 22 gigawatt will come from grid mounted and 10 gigawatt from rooftop solar. And similarly, in the next few years, 2019, 20, and so on. Wind capacity addition from 2032.3. How this addition will take place: 2.6 in this year, 2.6 in 2018, and next year 4.7, 5.4, 6.1, and going up to 60 by 2022. Next slide is I'm going to analyze how the solar competitive bidding scenario across states have been till now and what conclusions we can draw from it. So from 12 rupees plus to as low as 2.4, and then now stabilizing at around 2.7, 2.8. So this has been the story, and India was the first country globally which relied on reverse auction mechanism for solar, and now wind has also, we have some successful reverse auction for wind as well. So Bhadla Solar Park with 2.44 rupees per kilowatt hour or 3.8 US cents, which was won by Acme Solar for 200 megawatt, was one of the lowest. And in the last three bids, which happened in the May 2018, I mean this month itself, the discovery is 2.7 to 2.8 kind of a tariff. So going to as low as 2.4, 2.5, 2.6, now we can say that it has come up slightly. And in the range of 2.7 to 2.8, and the reason could be the people expecting around 24 or $25 cents, saying $13 cents is what get from those. So it's like in terms of tariff, and the expectation generally in the market is that it will be in this range only. Uh, but one factor which one should keep in mind is the safeguard duty or the anti-dumping duty. If that is the scenario, probably 56 this will be in. Now, next slide is about status of solar rooftop versus the grid connected PV. What we have noticed, although the addition of solar system has been quite robust, particularly from 2015 onwards, but the growth of rooftop share in the overall solar portfolio has come down. The share of rooftop in the overall solar portfolio has come down. So in 2015, it was 7.4% rooftop share. It has come down to, and 2016 it was 10%. It has come down to 5.2%. And we all know the reason. While there are a number of bids, and central and the state governments are also promoting a lot of grid connected, but at the same time, the rooftop has not picked up. It has not picked up to the desired level, and I think this governments, central and states, both are struggling, and there are various issues which we'll discuss later, because of which it has not picked up. So in as of March 2018, the installed rooftop solar capacity is 1.06 gigawatt, whereas the target was 10 gigawatt by this time. And solar rooftop deployment has been quite low compared to the available potential, and there are various issues and challenges. Next slide is I'm coming to now wind and wind power scenario, capacity growth and evolution of tariff. So by March 2018, now we have 34 gigawatt wind capacity already in the system. And wind power sector has witnessed a record capacity addition in 2016-17, which was 5,500 megawatt. But in last financial year, 2017-18, it has come down to 1,766. There are multiple reasons, and GBI being withdrawn, and the AD accelerated depreciation benefit has come down to 40% as a percent, and the challenge which is coming from the solar in the overall renewable portfolio are one of the these three are the main reasons for this kind of subdued growth in the wind sector. If you see the evolution of the wind tariff, and as I mentioned earlier, that just like solar, the reverse auction bidding in wind is also taking place. Inflection point for this was February 2017, where when SECI came out with 1,000 megawatt reverse auction bidding, and the price discovery was 3.46. FIT, it used to be before, and FIT obviously it varies from state to state, but was much more than the discovery from the reverse auction. There was opposition, from the industry and suppliers, but what we have seen bid. The competition, although they said that they do not like this, but they have participated in the bids, and the prices have progressively come down. For example, from 3.46 in the GUVNL December 2017 bid for 500 megawatt, it was as low as 2.43. Again, we do not have a time series data for this only 1 year. Is that government agency sponsored bids like say there the tariff discussion is as compared to state government sponsored bids, and so maybe that the bidders are more comfortable in terms of getting the payment on time and anticipating lesser as compared to with state government and their agencies bids. So the last bid, which was April 2018, 2.59, 2.6 rupees per kilowatt hour is what. Now, upcoming capacities are since February 2017, 8 gigawatt tenders have been allocated by Central State Agency. These will come online. And in addition to this, and quite importantly, uh, National Institute of Wind Energy invited EOI for development of 1,000 megawatt offshore wind. So offshore is a new phenomena in India, and the government has come out with the intention of 2,000 megawatt of offshore wind target in India, of which 1,000 has already come out. Next slide on market intelligence. And so one, the structural changes in the wind power sector. Few numbers of large investors with high operational efficiency will dominate the industry. So that is the consolidation, which is going to take place. That is taking place in solar, but will start in wind as well. And the players will obviously, to compete in this market, will have to adopt new business model in order to be financially viable in the lower tariff regime, which comes through the reverse auction mechanism. Investment scenario, we're expecting 4 to 6 gigawatt of annual deployment, and offshore and repowering will be the new investment opportunities in the sector. Grid side issues we have to overcome, such as curtailment or transmission congestion. These will be the major challenges in the wind sector going forward. Technologically, development side, lower tariffs and competitive bidding will also require all these suppliers and the IPPs to go for R&D, research and development in value chains of wind turbine generators, and obviously with the target to squeeze down the cost further. Low tariff will put tremendous pressure to ensure better operation and maintenance practices and asset management, and of course on the remote monitoring solutions. The sectors we are expecting will witness numerous joint ventures, collaborations, and the strategic alliances. And I'll speak about that in one slide later. And the motivation factors of these alliances could be product diversification or bringing in operational efficiencies and accumulating costing. Next slide is broadly the challenges and the drivers for renewable energy sector in India. So we see three broad things. One is demand itself, the electricity demand, the power demand. Uh, the challenge is that efficiency factors like demand side management, energy efficiency, energy conservation, T&D loss reduction. So these will lead to decrease in demand for renewable energy, or for that matter, the energy from any source. Just to give you a brief idea about it, we are expecting close to 30 to 40,000 megawatt of demand reduction because of energy efficiency, largely driven by ESL in the next 4 5 years itself. The kind of investment which ESL is going to make. From 14 to FY14 to FY18, just to give an example, CA had estimated a CAGR of 6.5%, but actual demand was 8%. So there was less demand as compared to what was projected by the government agency, Central Electricity Authority. Deficit has reduced to 0.7%. So supply side situation has improved. All the way the power for all, it has reached everyone. So those kind of issues are still being sorted out. But on apple to apple basis, energy deficit now has reduced to 0.7% in FY18 from 10%, which was there in FY10. So that's the demand situation. Now, what are the solutions or the drivers for this? With GDP growth of expected growth of 7.3% per annum, and rising living standards of the consumers, we expect that it will increase the overall power demand in the country. And obviously, as we see that more renewables are being added than the conventional. And going forward, I think any government will also focus on this being clean and environmentally friendly energy. So I think the renewable will definitely be required and be added into the system. Universal access to 24/7 supply, industrial corridors, metro rails, other infrastructure will definitely add to the demand. Make in India, power for all, promotion of electric vehicles. These are definite drivers within demand. In China, finance renewable energy plan means an investment of $125 billion US dollars, a kind of investment into the system, and that is just from the generation perspective. Additionally, you will require investment, transmission, evacuation, and the balancing part of it. So obviously, with 125, assuming 70/30, 87.5 million of debt, and 37-38 billion dollar of equity is what is required. For in the financial institution, banks, and NBFCs which are operating in this country providing funds. So innovative financial instruments like green bonds, infrastructure debt funds, pension funds, crowdfunding, hedging risk fund to allow cheaper financing. These will be required so that in the competitive scenario when you have reverse auction, so that that the companies are able to bid, and at the same time with the objective that consumers are not hit badly. Everything ultimately has to be passed on to the consumer. They will have to pay the tariff discovered. Grid integration is going to be the biggest area of concern, and developed countries are already implementing this. Is what we have seen Germany, Japan, and everywhere, that after a certain percentage of infusion of renewable into situation demand and states, so there are now further RE power injection issues. These targets. So development of the forecasting tools, strong investment balancing, renewable energy management center, and there are various tools which are available globally, which need to be deployed state after state, and also by the central one. PGCIL is making investment into it. STUs are doing, RLDCs are and SLDCs are struggling with these. So I think a lot of investment on the state-of-the-art technology and monitoring tools will be required to overcome this grid integration issue. Next slide. I know this is the hot topic, and people want to know about the kind of duty we are going to have, particularly on the solar sector, safeguard duty and the anti-dumping duty. And we also know the background of it and the court case which was there in the Chennai High Court. So in the safeguard duty case, imposition of 70% safeguard duty on imported solar cell and modules from China and Malaysia, and the public hearing on the same is awaited. developers holding a risk in constructing or importing solar panels due to non-clarity on the duties, because safeguard duty has a window of 200 days and it can be further increased by another 200 days. And then obviously, then if the government wants to continue with this, after a proper study, ADD or anti-dumping duty has to be imposed. The difference between the two is that safeguard duty can be imposed on a particular country, any solar panel or the module which is being imported, whereas in case of anti-dumping duty beside the country, it is very company specific on which you can deploy, and it has to be based on certain detailed study, which is to be approved by the government. Both these duties obviously come under the purview of Ministry of Commerce, and major imports we all know is from China, Taiwan, and Malaysia. Most of the Chinese companies who have bases there, manufacturing bases there, and it is also seen that because of the imports from these three territories, China, Taiwan, Malaysia, 25% kind of reduction has come about. So that is what the pressure the local domestic manufacturing companies are feeling the pinch. So though the current domestic manufacturing in India stands close to 5.5 gigawatt modules, and the capacities can be significantly scaled up if the manufacturers envision the clarity on duties. So they're all waiting for the clarity on these two duties. Just to give you an example, Adani has 1.2 gigawatt non-operational capacity, which can be scaled up with the demand and clarity on duties. And they are saying that they might scale it up if there is vision and the clarity from the government that what is going to happen in the next 2, 3 years or 5 years. Next is on the key issues faced by the project developers. So there are regulatory issues or the discount related, distribution companies related issues, inadequate benefits and inconsistency in policy and regulatory regime. States not willing to procure renewable energy despite a renewable purchase obligation being mandated to every state, and delay in granting net metering arrangement for rooftop. On the commercial side, delay in payment or non-payment by distribution utility. We have seen these kind of problems from the state, particularly in Tamil Nadu and Rajasthan. Poor financial strength of distribution companies despite central government efforts, such as Uday, we all know. So that is worrisome. On the local issue side, project progress hampering by local issues majorly related to land acquisition, land lease. To certain extent, these have been overcome when the government came out with the solar park scheme. It's a plug and play scheme where everybody is invited to participate, and the land related issues are being sorted. They're not there. The government is providing the land. On the financing side, reduction in tariff after competitive bidding affects financial viability, and it has resulted in financial institutions more than, and he's finding it difficult to raise money from the banks and FIs. O&M of wind projects is tricky due to varying wind patterns and grid integration issues. On the policy side, policy regulatory landscape witness challenge almost every year, and any adverse change can heavily impact project. Just to give an example, suppose the 40% AD is there now. We don't know whether in the next budget in one stroke the government will say no, the AD there will not be any benefit. So a long-term clarity will always be beneficial for the sector and for all the players. Next, so I'm lastly going to discuss about the consolidation aspect, which the sector is interested in. How the consolidation is likely to take place in both solar as well as wind. So we all know how the renewable portfolio installed capacity by Renew is large now with close to 4,000 megawatt, and with Ostro portfolio acquisition, I think the capacity will be added by another 1,000 plus megawatt. Similarly, Greenco right now is 3,200. With Orange acquisition, I think this will go up further. And Tata Power again in the same range of 3,000 megawatt, but with Welspun portfolio acquisition, again this will be added by another one. So more or less, these three large players, you can find that they are in the range of 4,000 to 5,000 megawatts. And Adani has come up quite nicely in the last 2, 3 years. So they are having capacity of 1,000 megawatts. Azure, SL Infra, NG, Hero Features, SoftBank, and CLP India. These are the bigger players. Now, our estimate is that this sector will see a lot of IPOs in the next 1 or 2 years. We know that Renew has filed or IPO, and I think depending on the success of Renew in the market, other players will definitely come out with an IPO issue. So they will add to their muscle power financially, and I think the lot of acquisition then you can see in this sector going forward, because it will be difficult for smaller companies in the sector to survive, because in going ahead in the future they will be finding it difficult to compete in the reverse auction bidding process and have capacity and add to their capacity. So I think it is also wise for them to maybe exit the sector, and obviously if there are good premium which is available by the buyers, and I think it will be a wise move on their part. So that's what is happening. So consolidation is definitely the order of the day, and that we have seen that when Wells Fund portfolio or Ostro portfolio, Orange, these are big portfolio, even those are selling in the market. So and there are a lot of capacities in the low range. If you look at capacity is 10 megawatt, 5 megawatt, 20 megawatt, even up to 50 megawatts, and they are on the block, and there are buyers and sellers available. Inside, the consolidation will be driven mainly by two factors: consolidation for the cost and operational efficiency, because now this we are expecting that only few large players and much less than solar, great efficiency gets more efficiency for the players, and so that they are more competitive in this current regime of wind tariff. Renew Power acquired Ostro. With this acquisition, Renew's capacity, as I said, will be more than 5,000 megawatt, and over 65% of the combined portfolio, Renew and Ostro combined, is already operational. The second factor which will drive the consolidation in this wind is the strategic alliance, and the strategic alliance from technology, partnership, and product diversification. So new product offerings with different features for various hub heights and wind speed will also lead to consolidation. Just to give an example, Inox Wind has sourced technology from AMSC Austria. So Inox and this company will co-develop 3 megawatt machine, much more than the present capacity of up to 2.5. So 3 megawatt machine for Indian market. So this partnership will help Inox in extending product offering, and ultimately, they will be beneficial in terms of competitive bidding scenario. Other example is key strategic partnership of Region Powertech and Vensis Energy AG, Germany, where Vensis designed a 1.5 megawatt turbine for India's low wind speed sites. So it is difficult for economically viable operation in the low wind speed side. So this is the kind of technology. So that is also likely to happen. Just besides the normal consolidation, and this technology tie-up based kind of consolidation will also take place in the wind sector. So that is what my presentation is. Now the house is open for discussion, and I'm ready to take questions. Over to you, ET Energy World team.
Hi, Amit. Are you done with the presentation, or do you want to add something more?
Yes. No, so that is
Okay,
all
so
from my side. Now I'm ready to take
okay,
any questions
okay,
which
yeah.
are
So
from
I think we are ready to take a few questions from the attendee side. So we have a question from Mr. Darshan Soni, who is asking, how do you see utility scale biogas and bio CNG market for India? You want to respond?
Yeah, so I think utilities as of now are focused more on solar and the wind market. Biogas and bio CNG market, I think, is a future, but right now, as of now, I think the focus is more on these two sectors. And the reason could be the cost part of it, the economic viability part of it, and the scale. So if the biomass, the major problem and the issues is the supply chain kind of issue. From the farmers till the plant, the kind of collection, transportation, and the calorific value and the kind of technology which is required to sustain it. So those kind of, there have been many experiments in Haryana, Punjab, also in South India, but to the scale which utility would like to have it are still not there. So I think in future we might have, but right now, because that you are able to generate power at 2.5, 3 rupees from solar and wind, so it is difficult for any other technology to survive with a higher cost at this point of time.
Thank you, Amit. The other question is from the side of Annika Szynski. She's asking, what kind of effects do you see of the new renewable energy capacity installation on the existing fossil fuels dominated energy system? So I think she's referring to the technical aspects of maybe grid connectivity, if I'm not wrong. So how do you respond to that?
Sure. So as I mentioned that the grid balancing is going to be the major issue, and Germany and other countries are struggling with it. So some of the technical solutions, as I mentioned, the Renewable Energy Management Center with proper forecasting tools, and the other technologies which are required for grid balancing are the hour of the need of the hour. And I think the central government and the state governments, they have both recognized, and that is why a major investment in this area and the renewable energy sector is going to take place. Power Grid Corporation of India, for example, is going to set up more than 50 such REMCs, renewable energy management centers, across India. At the same time, some of the state governments where the RPO, they have met the RPO, and I mean the renewable energy share is higher. They are already struggling with this. State load dispatch centers are struggling with this, so they are on their own taking certain actions for grid balancing. So that has already started happening, but I think this is just the starting point in India as compared to developed countries. And a lot of investments would be required, a lot of technological infusion will be required. Just to give you an example, one of the Japanese conglomerate did a study in the state of Rajasthan to estimate what is the kind of investment and the technological requirements for evacuation of 20,000 megawatts of renewables in that state alone, which is likely to come up as per their policy in the next 3 4 years. It's a humongous investment which is required, and despite the grant which was coming from that country and some of the grant which was also coming from the central government, the level of investment was huge. And I think the state government then went back and said that we maybe we'll have to do it in phases. So I think after all these targets and the technological changes which have taken place, the tariff which has come down, the next wave of investment in the renewable energy is going to be in the grid balancing.
Okay, thank you, Amit. The third question is from the side of Sushma. She's asking, can you please elaborate on the repowering market? What is the potential and how is the policy support at the moment?
Okay, so it is difficult to estimate at this point of time because a detailed study would be required, and the repowering market estimate will be dependent on economically or financially deployment of new technologies and new machines on the existing sites. So once a detailed study of different sites is conducted by the MNRE, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, then only that kind of estimate can be carried out. It will include both how much megawatts by the new technology can be added up against what is existing, plus at the same time the investment and the associated return on investment. Because India being a developed country, we cannot just go for repowering just for the heck of it. We have to see it in the context of financial viability and feasibility. So I think that kind of a detailed study will be required. I think NIWE, National Institute of Wind Energy, and the MNRE are going to undertake this study in a detailed manner. At the same time, in the last 2 3 years, we have seen a higher capacity, and as I mentioned in my presentation, that a low wind speed site also can be covered by the technologies. So these will also be taken into account while establishing the policy for the grid balancing. making that kind of investment estimate.
Okay. Thank you, Amit. The next question is from the side of Anand, who is asking, there has been a lot of discussion on job creation in the renewable energy sector. What is the accurate, number for manpower requirement projections in the years ahead for job creation in the renewable energy sector?
Working with the National Skill Development Corporation and also Government of India, uh, around 300,000, 3 lakh persons would be required for 100 gigawatt of solar deployment. So this is the direct and somewhat indirect employment, because you will also require some semi-skilled, non-skilled kind of workers and the labor also for these facilities. So roughly 300,000 persons would be required for 100 gigawatt kind of deployment. This will also, in addition to this, suppose India adds up 10 gigawatt of manufacturing capacity of say solar again. So that will require you know additional manpower. So this 300,000 I said is only for the 100 gigawatt power generation perspective. From for the manufacturing perspective, that is in addition to this. Now, third factor is the wind, and wind again with 60 gigawatt, 30 has already come up, 34 has already come up. So another 26 gigawatt will also add almost 50,000 kind of employees. So that is in a nutshell, this is what the total potential is. We are doing this study, as I said, for NSDC with certain benchmarks and the detailed survey. We're talking to different stakeholders. We are taking into account international case studies in this regard. And in the next 3-4 months, we are going to come up with a pakka figure for in this regard.
Thank you, Amit. The next question is from Barry Cohen, who is asking, with grid integration being the biggest barrier to renewables, why isn't there more interest in coal to biomass conversion? Very interesting question there. How do you respond to that?
Really. So coal to biomass, India, as we all know, that we have a INDC target, and in the INDC target, we found it feasible to mention that around 40% of our total uh, generation will be from the non-fossil fuel, which will include renewables, nuclear, and also hydro. So that means that we are not just gung-ho only on renewables. So any technology which is environmentally friendly and financially feasible is okay for us. And we are also not saying that we will not add the conventional power also. If something is feasible, and we'll add that also. Now, grid integration, as we all know, is definitely an issue in renewables, but that is something which can be overcome as well. It's not that it is unmanageable. It is manageable. Of course, it will require investment. Now, coal to biomass, if it is environmentally, if we can generate it in an environment friendly way, yes, by all means. But at the same time, it has to be financially feasible as well. So that is there where the question mark is. So given that scenario, I think the decision for now is that we'll add more of renewables than this kind of a technology.
Okay, thanks, Amit. The next question is from Dinesh Kagati, who is asking, energy storage is important to increase renewable energy mix. What are the policy initiatives that you see coming up to encourage storage sector, energy storage? Thank you.
Good question. So I'm happy to note that people are asking actually those questions which are very relevant to the sector. So energy storage is definitely one of the idea and the concept for grid balancing. Hmm. And there are various storage techniques. It could be through battery storage, as we all know, or even the pumped hydro and other means. So government has not come out with a policy yet, And as I mentioned earlier, that now that we are going to face the grid integration issues more and more, we will definitely think, I mean, the government will definitely think about it. But a step has already been taken. Some of you might have noticed that Solar Energy Corporation of India, SECI, has come out with a solar wind hybrid kind of a project on pilot basis. So that is to identify the kind of practical and implementation related issues when somebody goes for this kind of a technology. Hmm. So hybrid, and also they are thinking of a storage. Storage could be for 8 hours or maybe 16 hours. So the tender is going to come out. So various agencies at the central level and also now at the state level are thinking of hybrid and with storage kind of a thing. But challenge again is the cost part of it. The investment which is required is again huge. At the same time, the viability of it. So with the storage, it is said normally that the day with the storage, renewable is competing with conventional, conventional will be totally out of it. So that means that we have not reached that day yet, which essentially means that the cost is high and also we are going slow. What country like India is expecting that there will be more R&D on the storage side, and these will become more viable for a larger application. I mean, the grid connected kind of storage system. So I think we are waiting for that kind of technological evolution. Plus, at the same time, we are experimenting with, as I said, hybrid and with a storage kind of a system. With these two in mind, going forward, Government of India will definitely come out with a policy.
Okay, so the next question is from the side of Samir, who is asking the government says that capacity addition target of 175 gigawatt by 2022 is likely to be overachieved, while there was a recent report which said it might be difficult. What is your view?
Okay, so 175, let us not look at 175 from 175. Let us break it down. So 60 gigawatt from wind, I don't think anybody will disagree that 60 is definitely achievable. We have 34 gigawatts. We have to achieve 26 by 2022. So that means in the next 4 years, something like 6 or 7 gigawatt per year. And the government has a target, and we have the capacity. We have the manufacturing capacity. We have the sites available from where the 26 gigawatt can be achieved. So 5 gigawatt here and there in wind. So I think 60 gigawatt is achievable. Let's come to the next part, which is the solar, which is the major one, 100 gigawatt. Now, for 100 to be achieved, again, we can break it down in two parts. 60 gigawatt from the grid mounted large capacities and the 40 gigawatt from the rooftop. Let's discuss the 60, which is the grid mounted one. So how much have we added last year? Around 5, 6, 11 gigawatt last year, if you see the overall figure. So if we can add 10 or 11 gigawatt in a year, which is largely grid mounted kind of a system. So that means even if this at this pace, we are going to add 50 gigawatt out of the 60, even if we maintain the same pace. So I think out of 60 gigawatt grid mounted, you can achieve 50, 55 or even 60 also. The challenge, as I also mentioned in my presentation, is the rooftop, because it has been very slow. There have been issues, and one of the largest issues that discoms are not willing. And why are they not willing? Because there is no incentive for them to encourage rooftop system. They are losing the best customer. Somebody who installs a rooftop on their roof definitely is the one who is getting a lesser electricity generated at a lesser cost than the grid. And who is the loser in that case? It is the distribution company. So in that scenario, when discoms are not encouraging, it is difficult for consumers to install these at their rooftop. So the government will have to come out with some kind of an incentive probably in the initial 1 or 2 years to encourage the distribution company to accept this rooftop, and they can come out with a financial incentive, and the money can be made available from National Clean Energy Fund. There are various other sources to make it happen. Once there is economies of scale and also some systems and some successful case studies at a larger scale, then probably you will find a larger revolution taking place in the rooftop system. So that is the challenge. Overall, I am hopeful that 175 definitely can be achieved, but whether it will be achieved depends on, as I mentioned, on the kind of scheme which the government comes out with to propagate rooftop. Other technologies, I don't see any issue.
Okay, thank you, Amit, for that question. The next question is from the line of Shashank Shekhar, who is asking, again, a very important and interesting question. He's saying, how is renewable energy being planned for rural India, where cooking fuel is still a lot dependent on biomass? And this is going to have impact on environment and climate change. So I think what he's trying to say is that keeping rural India in mind, what is it that the government can do? Are there any specific rural India specific policies that the government can come up with to promote solar or wind, specifically in areas where biomass use is causing a lot of environmental damage? So how do you respond to that?
Yes. Yes, so that is one area where I think I'll say that too many things are happening at the same time. Power for all 24/7, Saubhagya scheme. So the government is trying to reach out in terms of providing energy in a larger sense, not just from the cooking perspective, not from the biomass perspective alone. So I think in the next 3-4 years from now, you will find that at least every village will have a decent supply of electricity, provided Uday works well, provided distribution companies, put their house in order, and they are able to recover the money and control the T&D losses as well. Now, having said that, there have been many such schemes in the past. Earlier the Rajiv Gandhi Yojana, then the Deen Dayal Upadhyay Yojana, and so on and so forth, where mini grids were tried, solar mini grids were tried, and also on the cooking gas stove, cooking chulha kind of a scheme, biomass, and so these were tried, but not the success was not to the desired level, I'll say. It is difficult for me to say whether the government will come out with a scheme for a separate replacement of biomass. But I think Ujjwala Yojana, where the LPG at a subsidized rate is being supplied. So don't look at it from the renewable perspective alone. We have to tackle this situation from the overall energy perspective. On the one hand, Subhagya, energy supply, electricity supply, then Ujjwala Yojana. So I think then you can analyze the whole situation. But going forward, uh, renewable energy dedicated kind of a system for the rural masses, at least for the present government, I don't see that much of a focus. We'll have to analyze the situation in the next 2-3. As I said, a lot many things are happening at the same time. Then probably a composite scheme or a policy can come out. The government can come out with that kind of a scheme.
Thank you, Amit. The next question is from the line of Padma Raja, who is asking why why is it that tidal and geothermal energy is not taking off very well in India? Is there any plan by the central government to take a look at these areas? Tidal and geothermal energy. What are your views?
I know. Okay, so the reason is again the economics. So geothermal, the number of sites in India are limited. There are certain sites in Chhattisgarh, also in JNK, which can be economically extracted. But again, the cost of generation from geothermal is much more as compared to what the cost of solar and the wind in the country right now is. And same goes true with tidal energy as well. So I think one must appreciate that while from the experimentation perspective, theoretical perspective, and to say that country like India should experiment with all technologies, and there is a research and development wing within the ministry and also DSIR, Department of Science and Technology, but to extract them on a commercial basis and then supply to the masses, I think we are still far away from that perspective. There have been successful instances globally, but there the capacities are huge and the cost of generation is pretty low or comparable with other technologies. But in India, I think we have not reached that stage, and I don't think that unless there is something dramatic happens on the technology side, And I don't think that tidal and geothermal will be economically viable in the immediate near future. So I think that's what my opinion is, and I'm in agreement with that kind of policy, because in a developing country like India, we should also focus on what the consumers can pay. So if the solar and wind can be extracted around 3 rupees, 2.5 to 3 rupees, then why should we go for a technology where the cost of generation at this point of time is 7 to 8 rupees? But going forward, if the technological revolution allows us to extract these technology at a comparable rates, a 3, 3.5, 4 rupees kind of thing, then definitely we should go for it.
Okay, the next question is again an important question from the line of Dibya Jyoti, who is asking, what are the predicted impacts of the new hybrid wind and solar policy, which has just been announced by the government? In a snapshot, if you could cover it, will this affect the sector positively, as we have been told?
Yes. So this will impact it on in a positive manner, because ultimately there are number of sites what we have seen in India, that solar is at its peak in the daytime and the wind is available uh, at a very good speed in the morning and the night or evening hours. So in that sense, it makes perfect sense to go for a hybrid kind of a scheme involving solar and wind. The government has come out with this scheme with the objective to provide a framework for promotion of large grid connected, and large they are saying, not just for pilot, large grid connected wind solar PV hybrid system. And policy, one of the objective says that is also to encourage new technologies, methods, and way outs involving combined operation. Wind solar hybrids, under this category, wind turbine generators and solar will be configured to operate at the same point of grid connection. So there can be different approaches towards integrating these, depending upon the size of each of the source integrated and the technology type. So on the second important aspect, as they say, would be related to the sizing, which would depend on the resource characteristics. So in order to achieve the benefits of hybrid plant and optimal and efficient utilization of transmission infrastructure and better grid stability by reducing the variability in renewable power generation, and particularly in the location where the wind power density is quite good, the size of the solar PV capacity to be added could be relatively smaller, and the vice versa is also true. However, a wind solar plant will be recognized as hybrid if the rated power capacity of one resource is at least 25% of the rated power capacity of the other resource. So there have been certain conditions which have been, announced by this policy. So in a way, the good thing is that now there is a clarity as to what is hybrid, what constitutes hybrid. So this 25% kind of formula, so the people are clear that which are the particular sites where this can be commissioned. Also, this also clears the way in terms of signing a power purchase agreement with the buyer. Earlier, there was no clarity. So even if the site is there, even if the technology is available, who is the buyer? And because there is no the lack of policy and the clarity on it. The policy also, in a broad way, clears about the technological aspects. So I'm not going into that. So some of the technologies and how this integration will be defined, variable speed drive, and kind of other converter inverter configuration. So those have also been defined. Uh, the provisions for new wind solar hybrid plants have also been defined. Like for example, hybrid power generated from the wind solar hybrid may be used for captive purposes, sale to third parties, sale to distribution company. So all those things have also been. So there is more clarity as to what hybrid is, what kind of where you can sell this power to, and the margins, and the battery storage part as well has also been defined. So there is more clarity, and I think 2 gigawatt tenders announced, 1 gigawatt solar on wind farms, and 1 gigawatt wind on solar PV projects. So these two tenders have already come out under this policy till now.
The next question is from Abhishek Puri, who is asking, there was a recent report which said a CEO survey quoted a CEO survey saying that 70% of the solar and wind bids have been very aggressive. What is your opinion? And this is, Amit, this question is similar to the many other questions I'm getting on these lines, where people are, kind of trying to ask you, what is the larger long-term ROI vision that we see evolving in the sector in the context of the aggressive bidding that we have seen of late? Can you respond to that?
Okay, so aggressiveness is a relative question. So if you compare when the bid started, and in fact 17 rupees 92 paise in 2009-10, when the Jawaharlal Nehru mission was announced, and 20,000 megawatt to be achieved by 2020. So from that now we have come to this level of 3 rupees, 2.5 to 3 rupees. And all along during the last 8-9 years, I have heard that this is aggressive. And every time there is a bid, we touch new low. And every time they say that these projects will not be commissioned, but fortunately 10,000 megawatt commissioned just last year. So let us not be pessimistic about it, and let us not be shy about it. This is here to stay. Renewable energy is here to stay. Now another factor, and I am now extending the discussion, even in case of energy efficiency, just like in renewable and solar. See, these technologies are no more on the table, no more in the labs. These are on the ground. They have achieved economies of scale. There are suppliers available worldwide. And third, and very importantly, no more just the engineer's domain. Any technology, when it becomes a kind of a standard module, and when the financial experts take over, then it sees the implementation. The same thing is happening in energy efficiency now. So here also now everybody understands the technology. It is a financial calculations. At what cost? What is the capital? What is the WACC? Then and please remember, bid after bid, the lowest bidder has been someone who is backed by a foreign capital. So that essentially means what? That you have to look at the cost of the capital, and then your expected ROI. I do not I'm not privy to that, but that private information of each and every bidder. But nobody in the Indian context will bid at less than 12%, kind of ROI, IRR on the equity. So I mean, with that kind of thing, you can very well imagine that what is happening and who is bidding at what. At the same time, people are playing with these financial kind of parameters, debt to equity ratio. They are changing it as high as 85% debt and 15% kind of equity. Initially it was 70-30, so that is another factor. And equity IRR, as I mentioned, is that people, those who are very very aggressive, maybe at 10% if they want to make a portfolio or make an entry into the Indian market. So there are many places at PwC. We have also been advising, and we see that the kind of aggressiveness certain corporates play about. But all these projects, most of these projects, I'm not privy to the information of all, but most of these projects are viable. Let me tell you, nothing to worry on that aspect as of now. And you can see that once there was a rumor that safeguard duty and this duty might come up, and the module prices inched up in China. So we saw that the bids have started going up from 2.4, 2.5. It has moved to 2.78. In fact, one of the bid was over 3 rupees as well. So that means people are pragmatic. They understand. They are putting money on this, and this is a capital-intensive game. So it's not a small game. 1 megawatt is something like 4.4 and a half crore kind of investment. It's a huge investment.
Okay, thank you. Given the time constraints, I will be able to take only one more question. Although the list of questions we have received is really, really long, and which is very nice. But the last question is from from Mr. BD Gaur, who is asking, what is the percentage of price reduction in solar panels that is expected in the next 5 years? So Amit, you are being asked for a 5-year vision of prices of solar panels. May not be 5 years, but yes, I think you can discuss the factors that go into deciding the cost of solar panels. Let's say over the next 2-3 years or so. How would you want to shed some light on that?
Well, I wish I was an astrologer. Um, but having said that, please do not expect what has happened. And as they say that in case of insurance, that past is not the indicator of the future. So what has happened in terms of price reduction in the past may not be true going forward. So what I'm going to say is based on our limited interaction, and I cannot obviously disclose the absolute information, but based on our interaction with some of the leading suppliers globally, hmm, we are expecting a stable price regime in terms of module cost, cell cost. So then there are again, many factors. Suppose there is a sudden demand from Europe if the economy picks up there, and from US and some other developed countries. And in that case, some of these will be diverted toward those market. So it's a demand and supply. So in that case, the margins will be increased by the suppliers, mainly from China, Taiwan, Malaysia, and probably the cost will go up a bit. But even if the status quo is maintained, the kind of economic levels, economic activity levels are there globally, we are expecting stable price regime for the next 2 3 years, at least 2 years. Having said that, if there is some technological revolution which takes place, probably then you might see a 10% kind of a reduction in the prices of the model. That is what we have been told. But the price reduction is expected on a very large scale in the storage or the battery side of it. So keep an eye on that. There probably something like 40-50% kind of reduction in the battery storage is expected in the next 2 years, and that will make the whole renewable sector even more viable from what the levels it is today.
Thank you, Amit, for this wonderful presentation on the topic of moving towards clean energy, making renewables an accessible option. Unfortunately, we have not been able to take all the questions due to time constraints. But if the attendees have more questions, please send them at join@etenergyworld.com. Join@etenergyworld.com. It was an engaging and insightful talk, and I hope all the participants have enjoyed the session. The recording of this webinar will also be made available on etenergyworld.com. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a good day. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Joy.